seu podcast favorito para falar do ecossistema open, de tudo que acontece ao redor dele, né? Todas as inovações. Eu sou o Gabriel Pereira, sou host aqui do podcast, escrevo newsletter semanalmente para vocês aí sobre as novidades do mercado. E hoje é um episódio muito especial. Hoje eu resolvi tirar a vergonha da frente para receber aqui um convidado legal pra caramba. Só que dessa vez a gente não vai gravar em português. Dessa vez vai ser em inglês. Então eu vou colocar o meu João Santana aqui para jogo. Não vou deixar não vou deixar nada disso impedir que vocês recebam bons conteúdos. Então hoje vai ser um episódio diferente. Eu tô aqui com o Gonzalo STRAUSS, que é cofundador e CEO da Datanomik, uma empresa focada em Open Banking B2B lá do Uruguai. E hoje a gente vai começar essa história. E por que não tá falando em espanhol? Porque meu espanhol é pior do que o meu inglês. Glad to have you here, Gonzalo. Nice to meet you. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Gabriel. Eu não falo português, mas vou tentar falar em inglês. Sorry all, but thanks for the invitation, and it's great to be here with you.
Amazing. Thanks for managing to have time. And heard that you come to Brazil only for the podcast, so it's a pleasure.
Yeah, I came in Brazil only for the podcast. Actually, only for the beer and the podcast.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So everybody that's hear us, they know that I always want to understand the person behind the professional. So I would like to start with this. Who is Gonzalo? And without talking about work, who is Gonzalo?
Well, it's difficult to talk about me without talking about work. I think my personal life, it's linked with my professional life. But about me, well, I am, as you said, I am from Uruguay. I am a proud Uruguayan. I live in Montevideo, Uruguay, which is the capital of Uruguay. I am 25 years old. I am a software engineer. Actually, my first jobs were from the technical side. I was a coder.
Amazing.
I started writing my first...
You speak very well for a coder. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's the stereotype you have
Yes.
on coders. But actually, yes, maybe something about me. I lived my entire life in Uruguay. I never thought of actually studying coding or studying software engineering. After high school, I lived 1 year in Israel. And in Israel, I had one friend that was all the time trying to persuade me to study science. Yeah. I was very bad on math and on physics and on chemics. So I don't know why I chose to study programming or software engineering, but it was a great choice after all. So after I returned to Uruguay, I started studying software engineering. And I think there are two reasons for people on choosing to study programming or software engineering. The first one is because they love math, because they want to study science, but they don't want to study only theoretical science, only study math. So they chose a career that has science, but they also have applicable...
Basically, they have problems that need to be solved.
Yeah, that's right. And the other type of people, which is me included, it's the ones that they only want to study because of the programming side, but they don't want to study software engineering because of the math side. So first problem that I encountered when I started software engineering is that the first 2 years, at least in Uruguay, are mostly theoretical.
Yes, in Brazil it's almost the same.
Yeah, so you don't start coding.
You can't have the feeling if you actually enjoy the course or not, because you have all these foundation classes that are sucks.
Yeah. So I didn't care about having theoretical classes of the history of programming or of software architecture or whatever. But I had a lot of classes or lessons about math, algebra, calculus, and of course, my passion, or I wanted to find out if my passion was the programming side. So if I wanted to prove that, I was going to go 2 years without really understanding if it was my actual fit for me. So when I was in my second year of degree, I decided that the only way on understanding if I was actually good on the programming side, on the coding side, was working. Lucky for the people that started working on software engineering, it's not that if you are a lawyer or a doctor, you can start working on a tech company
Yes.
very from the beginning without having.
Actually, even if you're not in college, you can start as well. So.
Even if you're not in college, if you want to start learning from YouTube or from any digital or online lesson, you can start doing it. So I had a friend in university. He was working in a company called Astrobay at that time. Of course, I didn't have a full-time option, so I needed to work 3-4 hours a day. So he recommended me to the CTO. I had an interview with the CTO, and that was my first experience with coding. I actually say that Astrobay was my real university. I started learning more and more programming stuff from the Astrobay experience rather than from the university one. People were asking me, my colleagues were asking.
And what was the product?
Of Astrobay?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Astrobay was founded by Sergio Fogel and Andres Sirotsky, which are also the founders of The Local. I will tell a little bit about in a few minutes. But they were a payment processor company.
Okay.
Actually very focused on emerging markets, Latam as their main market, and Brazil as their biggest market. So they had a digital wallet where they were offering a prepaid voucher, so people could pay with this prepaid voucher for getting online services from global companies. Actually.
Amazing.
So
it's a hard place to start because you have to learn about coding and also learn about the business at the same time.
Yeah, and I think the second one was the toughest one. Actually, I remember that my first days on Astrobay were chaotic for me. I was living with my parents at that time, and I was arriving at home at 6-7 p.m. and I wanted to cry because I didn't understand nothing. I didn't know how to program. I didn't know how to the business and I think it took me something like 5 to 6 months to really understand the business behind Astrobay and why it was so amazing and why it was having a lot of traction in markets. But that I think that was one of my biggest and best choices because I could work in a place where it was not only a software factory. I didn't only learn how to code. Yeah. Of course, Astrobay was my real university on the coding side, but I learned how to do business as well. And we were really empowered by the founders and by the high executives there to take ownership of things and really do business, not only coding, but I was actually taking important decisions where we were processing a lot of money, millions of dollars per day. So I was a junior software developer, part-time, and I was doing integrations in Brazil, in India, in Mexico, and I was like, oh, this is big. Yeah.
It's a mix of like, I don't know, of courage, like people that are giving you responsibilities and make you like take the ownership. In the other hand, in the same time, I think the people are crazy to do this kind of thing because it's.
I think
it's
it was
a high
unconscious.
risk.
I was kind of naive. I really didn't understand the ownership that I was given. Only after I lost a lot of money because of some bug or some mistake on the coding, but. That was one of the great things, I think, and it really made me make better. And it's not just was on me; it was on everyone.
Mm-hmm. And for how long did you work with them?
Well, I worked in Astrobay actually until I started doing Datanomik. Okay. But I have to maybe give you some context on Astrobay and how Datanomik was actually built. So as I told you, Astrobay was founded in 2009 by Sergio Fogel and Andres Sirotsky. Both of them are Uruguayan serial entrepreneurs. They have made a lot of startups, and Astrobay was one of their first successful companies.
Amazing.
So They started in 2009, and in 2015, there was another company called The Local that spun out from Masturbate. So for the people that didn't know, The Local is right now the first Uruguayan unicorn company. That means that they are worth more than $1 billion. They went public last year in NASDAQ, which was also the first public Uruguayan company listed in NASDAQ. And they are also a payment processor company for emerging markets, but they are B2B. Astrobay, it's B2C, and The Local, it's B2B. They target e-commerce clients, and they have the biggest clients in the world. They have Amazon, Uber, Spotify, Netflix, and all the big ones are processing transactions with The Local for Africa, for India, for America, and actually for any kind of emerging markets. So
a huge responsibility in processing all those purchases.
And actually, The Local is a great success, and every Uruguayan is inspired by The Local story. It's kind of unique because right now we are used to.
It's not because, as I'm understanding here, The Local is not only a huge company, but it's a global company.
It's yes, every Uruguayan company that succeeds, it's a global company. Why? Because Uruguay,
It can't be a unicorn only in Uruguay.
No, no, without any doubt. I would like to say yes, but and you can see that as a disadvantage, but I see
What
it
is
as
the
an
size
advantage.
of population?
3 million people. So how many people you have in São Paulo?
So only in the city, I think it's like I don't know,
20,
10.
maybe?
Knowing all the cities around São Paulo, I know that's 20. If you take like Guarulhos and everyone that comes here to work.
Yeah. So we have 9 million cows and 3 million people in Uruguay. So we have 3 cows.
You don't need more cows right now.
Yeah,
If you
that's why we eat a lot of meat. But yes, Uruguay, it's a very small country. We are 3 million people. In Montevideo, the capital, lives half of the population. So it's very concentrated in Montevideo. And of course, entrepreneurs and people that want to build companies in Uruguay, they start building them with our global vision. Not because they don't love Uruguay. I think we are all proud of what we are building in Uruguay, and we have an even better ecosystem through the time. But it's not enough for us. We need to think on going to Brazil, on going to other parts of Latam, or even
at least Latam.
Worldwide. At least Latam. But it's an advantage because opposite to, for example, Brazilian companies, because Brazil, it's almost a continent, right? It's a huge country. There are a lot of companies. I would say most of the Brazilian companies stay just in Brazil. They don't need.
Actually, we have a lot of companies that are kind of local because they work really well in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, and they are not going to all places in Brazil.
Yeah, and
so you have to prepare expansion inside Brazil because it's really huge.
Yeah, and the difference, you were saying, can you build a unicorn just in Uruguay? No, we can't, but you may build a unicorn just in Minas Gerais, right? In Santa Catarina. You don't even need to build a whole Brazilian company. You can just start operating in a big state in Brazil, in São Paulo, in Rio.
In São Paulo, I think it's true. Actually, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm telling something that's not true, but I'm pretty sure that Daqui, which is the ultra fast delivery, they became unicorn in less than a year, and I think they were operating only in São Paulo, maybe in Rio, but not more than this, you know.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean they are not ambitious enough, but they aren't forced to expand to other parts, and it's okay. It's how their culture is it's built. But for Uruguayans, we need to start thinking on expanding our company to Latam and to many places, so we are less scared on doing that as well.
Yeah.
Brazilian companies that want to expand, they see it as something that it's anti-natural, right? It's something that it's an option for them. For us, it's not an option.
Actually,
it's something mandatory.
Nowadays, we are seeing more like expansions from other guys. So I remember, like, of course, I have a lot of guys like Totus and other guys like this. But if you see one that I remember right now, I think Jim Pass.
Yeah.
They have a good presence outside Brazil. Nubank, of course, going to Mexico, and have other guys doing the same. And I think it's interesting, especially because I think it's something like we're showing the world that we can develop good stuff too, you know, especially
Latinos can
yeah.
develop global solutions.
Yeah, not only like using Uber because everyone uses Uber, we can develop a good version here as well. So I'm really proud when I see that we are like, for example, I don't have nothing against N26 and N26 and Revolut, but I'm feeling happy when they come to Brazil and they have trouble to operate in our market because they see how difficult it is and how well are we doing here, you know?
Yeah, but it's not only on how well we are doing. Maybe we are not doing so well, but we understand the needs on the Latin American market. One mistake that Americans and European companies, when they come to Latam, do is that they think that the problems that they are used to face in the US or in Europe, because they work there, will work in Latam, and that's not true at all. But the other way around for Latin American companies, right?
Yeah.
When the locals started processing payments in Brazil, and they did really well, and they needed to expand to Africa, one of the big mistakes was thinking as something obvious that the way that we were processing payments in Brazil would work in Africa, but it's totally different because the people were born different, the payment methods are different, the use cases are different.
But to be honest, in these cases, I know that when you look back, you say it was obvious that wouldn't be the same. But in the moment that you made the decision, it's not clear what is different. So sometimes, even though you know that it's not the same as Brazil, you don't know what you have to change to adapt to Africa, for example.
But that's the definition of a startup. It's embracing the uncertainty, right? So yes, we didn't have a clue on how Africa was working, but we knew Africa was having the same problem.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't need the same solution, but they were facing the same problem. So we say, okay, let's execute it.
That's an example. It's outdated, but I think in 2017, Itaú Unibanco used to have a super app that were really, really huge. And then with a lot of discovery, they understood that the poor people didn't have enough storage in their cell phones to use this app. So they created an app lite that was a shorter version. And this make the skyrocketing the downloads and engagement and everything. It's really obvious right now, but sometimes the difference between São Paulo and the countryside place from São Paulo or from other states in Brazil, they have, for example, Banco do Brasil, Caixa, they have a kind of customer service in the river in some communities in a very remote places in Brazil. Yeah. So that's insane to imagine this how this works. So we have to also we have to continue to listen to clients and stuff like this. So
it's totally true. But going back to the local story, as I was saying, the local was born in 2015. And when I joined Astrobank in 2017. The local already existed. They were our little baby sister startup. They then grew up, of course. But at that time, we were sharing offices with the local in a small office. And it was great because we were having two companies, Astrobank and the local, having the same focus. We were both startups targeting global companies, global markets. And that's what I was saying. I was not only coding, but understanding that we could be ambitious enough to make amazing companies in the future, you know? So the local was one of the biggest and first success on on Uruguayan's tech history. The other one is Pedido, which I don't know if you know, which is this grocery startup. It was before Rappi even. So it was one of the first examples of why Uruguay could be global and successful in worldwide, right?
Great.
So when I joined Astropay, then I started getting promoted. I started leading some technical teams. Actually, the integrations team, which was in charge of integrating to new payment methods and actually acquires and gateways throughout the world. So take the example of Brazil. I was in charge of integrating Pix, integrating Boleto, integrating bank transfer, credit cards, and the same with Mexico with Spay, Oxo, Cody, and actually the same with India and net banking, UPI. So one of the best and amazing things that I had from Astropay was the experience on the payment side. So I was working on the payments industry and on the fintech industry, and I really got to understand why there were so many payment methods, right? There are so many payment methods right now in emerging markets, and we needed to unify all those payment methods to give a better user experience to the users and give a better service, of course, to our global customers, which were processing millions of transactions per day. And that's what was my first real contact with the fintech and payments industry, and I started understanding the pain of moving money from one side to another one.
I can imagine how many friction or opportunities that start to pop up in your head while you were looking to all these different methods and markets. And what was the first time that you heard about open banking? It was in the middle of this, because if you're talking about Pix and you're talking
at
about...
that time, Pix didn't exist, so it was even harder for us to move money in Brazil.
So, for example, what was this first moment that you heard about open banking?
Yeah, I would say it was last year. I didn't know about open banking before. We were using open banking, or we were actually doing some stuff with open banking, but I didn't know it was open banking. So there was a moment last year, I think it was in March or in April, where in Astropay, and actually in Astropay, it started in Astropay, we were having too many bank accounts everywhere. In Brazil, we were having 120 Caixa bank accounts, 100 Banco Brasil, 80 Bradescos, Santander, Itaú, because we're moving a lot of money, and we need to have redundancy, and it was not scalable. Why? Because the only way to access to that banking information was manual, and we were maybe handling 500 bank accounts.
So you had this pain in your company.
In our
so
company.
In order to process all the payments, you have to open a lot of different bank accounts.
Yeah. So maybe when I joined Astropay in 2017, this was not a big problem. Why? Because our volumes were not the same ones
But you pay someone to be there only doing all this stuff.
Yes, and not only for reconciliation, but actually we were
moving the money.
A payments company, so it was for any kind of process that was going on the company, from the reconciliation side, of course, but from the treasury one, from the support one, from the settlements, expatriation, support, any kind of operation that needed financial data was relying on our banking data, right? So actually getting that access to the data was our core, and it was in danger. It was in total danger because we're having first 5 people logging in into each of the home bankings to download bank statements, then 10, then 15, then 20. And I think we reached something like 30, 35 people with their only job of going into each of the home bankings and download the data and then proceed with the financial processes. And I used to say that they were banana ticketers, right?
Okay, just...
It's okay.
Yeah.
here. They were banana ticketers in the way that their only job was actually logging into each of the home bankings and get the bank extracts to proceed with the financial process. So it was not only unscalable, it was totally inefficient, unproductive, and prone to human error.
It's a huge risk. I can imagine how funny it would be to make a conciliation. That, for example, I don't know where can I find 10 million in payments. where I can find this?
It was impossible, and users were paying to all of our bank accounts, sometimes with a lot of mistakes. Instead of paying 500 reales, they were paying 50 reales because they forgot a zero, or if they had to pay 50 reales, they were paying 500 reales. So it was very difficult for us to reconcile all those movements and keep our treasury up to date.
If someone asked for reimbursement, for example,
it was impossible to identify the movement. So we were receiving a lot of movements that were totally unidentified, and it was really difficult for all of our staff to keep our operation steady. But the worst thing of all is that we were assuming that we were having a lot of losses because of that. It was part of our cost of operation. You know, if we wanted to make a business in emerging markets, and if we wanted to be a payment processor company like we were in Astropay or we were in the local, we were taking the assumption that we were going to have these losses because there was no possible solution until 2021, last year, when it was so unscalable, so inefficient, and we're losing a lot of money because of human errors, because instead of copying from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet 1 million, we were copying 10 million, and then we were taking decisions on that, and of course it was chaotic. We were forced to look for workarounds, alternative solutions, and see if there were some kind of, even not, I wouldn't say automatic solution, but at least something better than what we were actually having, which was only humans, right? So that's the first time that I heard about open banking, because I started researching on Google. That was my first contact with open banking. About I don't remember what I looked up, but I suppose it was banking connections, APIs, and I started reading about open banking in Europe, with UK as the leader and the regulations, and then about in the US with open banking players in this non-regulated market like Plaid or Amex, Finicity. And then it was at the beginning of the year, Brazil was starting with the open banking regulation. So I started reading some stuff, mostly from Brazil, and some players that were starting to do some basic stuff on open banking. And when I read that, I remember that after doing that research, I reached out to my boss, which was the CEO of Astropay, and I told him, hey, I think I found the solution. I think we have our solution, which is open banking. And
Amazing.
That's where we started all the journey.
And from finding a solution for a problem that from a company that you are working and going to create your own company to develop something like this, how was the path to decide to create Datanomik?
Yeah. So of course, at the time I was not on the technical teams. I was on the product side. I was in charge of the product team in Astropay. And spoiler, we were not thinking on creating a company. We were just thinking on finding a solution to an internal problem that we were facing in Astropay, in our company.
Actually, this a well-known playbook that happens with a lot of people.
A lot of great companies succeeded because it was totally natural, right? They found a problem, they solved it, and then they found out that...
Especially for B2B.
Yeah, especially for B2B. So that was it happened to us. We were a company with enterprise requirements, enterprise needs, and we needed, of course, enterprise solutions. And one thing with open banking, when I started researching on reading about Tink, Control Layer, and all these open banking European players, and then the same ones in the US, and then the first companies in Latam, they were all focused on the B2C side, right, on the consumer side. They were trying to give consumers the benefits of open banking for KYC, for credit, for personal finance management solutions. And we were a company with company business bank accounts with business requirements, and none of those solutions were useful for us.
Actually, if you see, for example, nowadays, companies that need this kind of solution, they used to build their own APIs.
Yeah.
And this is basically for very, very large companies. And if anyone's in the middle of that, they don't have the same solution. Especially if they had, so they have like such a specific need as like payment processing. Like
Yeah, like in Asprey. So when we saw that there was no suitable solution for what we were needing, we say, okay, we have an amazing tech team. Why don't we start building this internal product in-house? And that's what we started doing with within, I think it was like 2 months, 2 to 3 months, we created an MVP for Brazil. We started with connections with Caixa, then with Bradesco, then with Banco Brazil, and we got to the point that we were processing 90 to 95% of our movements through our open banking solution, with the thesis of people, our users, our teams, internal teams, shouldn't enter home bankings again. That was our premise, and we were actually achieving that in just a little time. In 2 months, 3 months, it was
basically you were like you type your credentials in your solution, and then you go there and take all the information, try to conciliate.
That was not only for reconciliation, but was actually for all the different processes that were relying on financial information. For example, support. Our support teams that were actually getting the claims for the users because they were paying, and we weren't delivering the service or the product, and they were trying to identify the movements they were doing it through open banking. So after we saw that our solution was actually working and it was useful for us, we say, okay, if this is working for Astropay, this should be working for Astropay-like companies. And the first move that we did was actually knocking the local's door, because it was also a payment processor company. It was our sister company, and of course that they needed that solution. And that's where we started building kind of internal solution, but not only for Astropay, actually for our sister company as well. And then, of course, I started being obsessed with open banking and obsessed about the potential of our solution, because I believe that these kind of solutions were not only useful for financial companies that were really hardcore, like Astropay or the local, but they were useful for companies that they were not even tech, or they were not even financial related companies, but they were struggling with financial access to information. So that's where I think it was in October of last year, I pitched Sergio Fogel, the founder of the local and Astropay, and I told him, look, Sergio, we have built this MVP. It's working great. We have been achieving these results, A, B, or C. I think we should be focusing on this product as well as some vertical, as some business unit from our business. And Sergio replied me, look, Gonzalo, this is not an MVP. You can remove the M. You already have a product because you already have a happy customer, which was Astropay. And I think that we should think bigger than just a product. We should start a company on this. And that's where the idea of building Datanomik started. Then in just a few weeks, we reached out to Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the, if not the biggest and best
nowadays,
venture capital from the US, and in just a few weeks we got term sheet, and we got a 6 million seed round for a company that didn't exist.
Amazing.
Datanomik even didn't exist.
You already had the name
No,
by that time. No?
I didn't have the name.
It was like to be defined company.
Yeah, I always say that I didn't have a pitch deck. You know, my pitch with the A16C was showing the product that we were building internally, which was better than actually having a pitch deck without the product, you know.
Yeah.
But they started in the opposite way than most of the companies start. That it's having a pitch deck, but not with the product.
Definitely, it's a better way to
to
start.
Yeah, so that's where Datanomik started the journey with the mission of helping companies.
To be close to the
with the mission of getting helping companies get access to financial information in a real-time, faster, standardized way, and that's where we started, of course, building from scratch a new solution that was suitable for this kind of companies.
And when you decide to create Datanomik, and actually nowadays, did you have any company that you can use as inspiration or benchmark? Because to be honest, I don't remember any company that is focusing on. I know that people have solutions for open banking for business, but I can tell you a name from someone that's looking only for this.
Yeah, no, there are no specific companies like Datanomik. That's why we decided to create Datanomik on a first instance, because there were no companies with those requirements. But I will make some correction. We are not an open banking player. We use open banking, which is different. We can be, of course, labeled as an open banking company because we are in the open banking industry. But the thing with labeling open banking players as open banking players is that they are trying to compare all of them in the same way, right? It's like with the payments industry. If I say I am a payments player, you are not comparing, I don't know, Mercado Pago with the local. They are totally different. They are both in the payments industry, but they don't have nothing to do one with the other one, right?
Makes sense.
So yes, we are moved by the mission of helping companies getting easy access to their financial information, and we believe the best way to do that, to achieve that, is with open banking. But it may be with other things as well, not only with open banking.
Definitely.
And that's why we believe that, yes, open banking is something core in Datanomik, but it's not the only thing.
Something that I can tell you that it's the core of Datanomik, it's API.
Yeah.
Definitely that's something that wouldn't change.
Yeah, we are of course living in an API world, right?
Yeah.
Everything is being APIfied.
Yeah.
And I think it's the way that things should be done, because we are living in a more interconnected and cross-border world, and that's one of the missions of open banking, actually helping companies that have operations in multiple countries with multiple bank accounts from multiple banks in multiple markets as a one single API.
And so you decided to create Datanomik, and then you start to understand the environment. I would like to ask you, what is the difference between Uruguay and Brazil when it comes to open banking?
Yeah.
Or other places that you're seeing, like in Latin America.
Yeah. So when I first I imagine the audience, of course, knows about open banking, but I always try to highlight the importance of understanding that open banking, it's just a concept, right? It's not a product, it's not a technology, it's just a concept in which we rely to build services, to build product, to build technology. And when we speak about open banking, I speak in three different ways. In terms of regulation development, in terms of infrastructure development, and in terms of educational development. So the main difference between Uruguay and Brazil is that Uruguay has no infrastructure development, it has no regulation development, and it has no educational development. And if you go to Brazil right now, for example, of course, Brazil is already regulated, it's implementing and trying to be fully operational on open banking. And because of that, the market is mostly educated and it's starting to understand the benefits of open banking. So,
But the non-regulated existed like for a long time. So
the non-regulated scenario existed on the so for a long time. But Uruguay, it's a smaller country with smaller needs, with smaller companies,
okay.
with less and fewer companies.
So you didn't had someone like Giabosu trying to
No,
aggregate accounts for
No.
personal.
no, we didn't have. So of course, I have to say that Uruguay for us is it's very unique because it's where we come from. But as we were saying on the beginning, it won't be our most important market. We are there actually right now. We are operating. We have fully coverage in Uruguay with the 7-8 banks that we have. But our main market it's Brazil because of these kind of developments that I was mentioning. There, Brazil it's the leader in open banking.
You're in Brazil and Uruguay, or I have another country?
No, we are operational in Uruguay, in Brazil, in Colombia, in Argentina, and we are in the process of being operational in Mexico and in Chile.
A lot of job to lawyers and
a lot of job from all these sides of a business, not only from the legal side and from the regulatory side, but as many other open banking players. I think that one of the biggest challenges is gathering all this information from non-regulated markets, regulated markets, different sources of information. It's a real chaos. Of course, we are doing this because we love that if we solve it, the trophy will be big. But it's a real challenge and it will take time. Something that I say to our clients and to the customers in general is that open banking, not only Latam, but still everywhere, it's on their first days. We are still understanding the whole potential of open banking, and it's something that it will take time to get better and mature.
In my head, I think we are achieving the day zero yet, because we are finishing the preparation of this infrastructure. And we're having people getting educated about open banking. These cases that we have right now, for me, it's makes sense in a way that they are testing MVPs. So I think we are achieving the day zero. So hey, okay, now the serious game starts. You know?
In most of the cases, we're still in day zero. In some places, I would say that the countries that succeeded most in open banking right now were the ones that they don't know they are using open banking, and those are the market-driven markets, right? Like for example, in the case of the US, if you ask to an average American person if they know about open banking, they mostly be saying that they didn't have a clue about open banking, but they will be mostly using some kind of open banking application through Venmo, PayPal, I don't know, Robinhood.
Everyone is client of Blade.
Yeah, Plaid has a lot of consumers, and you have a lot of players that, yes, they are operating in a non-regulated market, but they are getting, like, I think something like 20-25% of the US population it's using open banking every day. So it's a big traction, right?
And looking to the product development right now, what do you think it's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now? I don't know if you had like one thing that you could improve that would help you to develop your product, like I don't know, like digital identity. I don't know what could be a challenge to access this information or make movements in their bank accounts.
Yeah, I think that I come from the payment side, so of course I am kind of obsessed with payments, and I think one of the biggest advantages that open banking will have is moving money from one place to another one with open banking. This is something that it's still not solved anywhere. and even less in the B2B side. We are still doing some small steps on the B2C side with
it's
payment
even
initiation.
worse. It's even worse for.
But the payment flows are they have a lot of friction. The user experience is not best. In Brazil, they are trying to combine open banking with Pix in payment initiation journey, and it's not something that's still well enough, good enough. But I think that that will be mission critical for the future, because that's a pain that any kind of company, being financial or not financial, is having right now, moving money and doing transfers everywhere from everywhere.
And right now, what are the types of customers that you have? Like, you have larger ones, like typical payment processors, or you're having like small ones as well?
Yeah, so we started with payment processor companies, of course, like Asurbe and the local, but then it turned around that we realized that most of the companies that that they were having this need were not payment processor companies at all, but they were not even financial. They were not even technological. And that's where actually our solution kind of evolved, because we started as an API first company and as an infrastructure company, but then it turned out that we were not only solving this for companies that were able to integrate to our APIs, but we were actually offering this solution to construction companies, to energy companies, to utility companies, to travel agencies, to health companies that they were not having tech resources. They were not taking the time to integrate to our APIs. And that's where we developed our Business Gate platform, which is a platform, a UI, in which they can link all their bank accounts in just a few steps and start getting all the insights and financial position visibility to run their operations and financial movements in an easy way. So I like to say that Datanomik solutions are industry agnostic. We are moved by use cases, not by industries. Why? Because we believe that the use cases that construction companies, to take it as an example, they may have, yes, some specifications, but they have a global denominator with a common denominator with, payment processor companies as well, and to travel agencies as well, and
Basically,
to retailers as well.
If you go to the scenario that they have a lot of companies in different bank accounts, and they have to summarize everything and give like intelligence for the customer service, and also provide the information for the accountant, also for the financial guy.
Yeah, we used to say that a potential customer for Datanomik should meet at least one of these 5 conditions: have multiple bank accounts, multiple banks, multiple markets, process high
The volume of
volumes
transactions.
and the frequency of those transactions, right? So if they meet at least one of those conditions, they can be a clear customer for Datanomik. Of course, we have companies that they meet all of them, that like the local Asurbe. We have companies that they just meet one condition, but it's very exaggerated in a way, and they really have the need. But something in between, it's our average customer. And when we try to measure the size of the company, you ask, are we going through enterprises or to SMEs? We don't think that the need of this solution can be measured by the size of the company, but it's from the size of the use case.
Yeah.
We have small companies that, because they really have the need, because they are the core, they are willing to pay a lot of money because we are really solving the daily tasks. And we have companies that they're really, really, really big, but they don't have the use case in a mature way.
And here in Brazil, how the things are going right now? You already here?
Yeah, we are already here. Well, I am in São Paulo right now, not only for drinking the beer, but yes, of course, Brazil. It's a country that we really believe it will be surely showing their neighborhoods like Uruguay, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia the path to achieve open banking. So that's why it's very important for the players in Brazil to succeed in Brazil, because then that will be the only way to succeed in other parts of the regions. And not only in Latam. Actually, one of the hot news right now is that the US is trying to copy the Brazilian pigs, and we are Brazilians are being taken as an example on the financial innovation. And this is something that you should, of course, Brazilian be proud enough. And I, as a Latino, I am proud enough as well, because it's amazing that a country that like US is taking pigs as an example for their own global solution there.
That's amazing, and we like to say that, I don't know, we have a lot of problems, but our financial market, it's insane, because we are really, really well. For example, if you go to, I don't know, for UK, the largest banks for B2C, they are nothing compared to the biggest ones here in Brazil. So we are facing a lot of different challenges for ages. So I think this helps us to improve our solutions, products, like our security stuff, anti-fraud stuff. Like we are in other level of challenge, and I think that moves us towards to develop good things. And one example was in Marbella, when we were in the open banking conference, world conference, and a lot of guys from different countries were coming to us to ask how we were managing to do everything and why we were doing this so fast. I basically said that was because of central bank, because otherwise, and I think it was a good decision to make this, I don't know, to give this challenge that say, hey, we're going to put open banking in 1 year. Of course, we wouldn't put everything in 1 year because it's a lot of stuff.
And it will take some years.
But in the end of the day, it was more important to make people move around, move to find a target instead of going slow and like, okay. So I think they set the pace really fast, and we are now seeing a lot of stuff. And actually someone just told me, hey, Gabriel, you are writing and making podcasts and stuff like this about open banking. And if these things like, I don't know, and when open banking is over, I say, hey, man, there are so many investment on this that open bank is not getting over.
Is payments over? We are just starting in any kind of fintech innovation. But something that I would like to add to your speech is that it's not only because of the central bank. Of course, Brazilian central bank is it's, I think, one of the strongest central banks of the world. But it's also the level of problems that you as Brazilians are being faced. You are really needing this kind of innovation, but because if not, you are not growing. Your economy is not growing. Your financial companies are not growing because you really need this kind of innovation to succeed. Take the example of Argentina, for example. It's something similar in other contexts. Argentinians, of course, they are suffering a lot because of their economical, social, political situation. But they are also one of the countries that are having more innovations per capita. And the logical reason is because they really need it. They have no choice than innovating through crypto, through Web3, and through any kind of financial experience.
The danger makes you to move
faster. If you don't really understand that this will change your life, you won't be doing it as fast as you Brazilians or Argentinians are doing it.
If you are starving, you start to walk.
Totally.
That's something that happened. I would like to understand more. So you're in Brazil, and I don't know. You were also partnering with banks as well, or you're approaching only the end customer? How this is working right now?
Well, I think it's
because nowadays we have like companies in the open banking segment that are targeting B2C, other ones like only B2B and everything.
Yeah, we are, as we said in the beginning, we are just focusing on B2B. And I think open banking needs to be an ecosystem.
No, but just to make clear, for example, you go to a bank to go to your client. That is, it's a B2B2B, or you go directly to your client, like you said, the construction industry.
We have both channels. We have referral or distribution channels with banks, for example, with ERPs or with other accounting systems, for example. But we also offer our own platform directly to customers. That's why we are not only an API company. We have our own platform without technical integration or technical efforts. And customers that they don't have those needs can start using our platform in just a few steps. So depends on the use case, depends on the size and leverage of the company. It's how we go through them.
Amazing. Actually, in my point of view, the regulated open banking for business is still, I don't know.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, in my opinion, it doesn't exist. But imagine that they exist. Do you think that could be a more reliable source for Datanomik, for example? Or
in terms of security, or
I don't know.
Of course,
not only security, but I think you have like security, you have like availability and stuff like this, you know.
Yeah. You were asking me earlier which were the biggest challenges in Datanomik, and I think if not the biggest one, it's the perception of security, not security itself, but the perception of security. And that's one of the biggest challenges in open banking in general, as an overall. So the thing is that because the market is still not educated enough, they don't feel open banking is secured. They don't trust open banking. Why? Because they were not used to input their banking credentials in a place where it's not their bank. We may be building the more secured open banking platform in the world, but if the user don't trust your platform and they believe it's not secure, even if you are, they won't use you. Yeah. So I think that having regulations are important, not because they will make security better. Maybe they will, and you will be building a framework with standards and specifications to rely on. But it's because people will trust users, consumers, the market will trust them because they are regulated, because it comes from official governmental sources.
And when, I don't know, especially nowadays, there have a lot of that data leaks happening, like Uber right now, that it was a social engineering and all this stuff. I think we are receiving more news about this kind of like I don't know, they seem to be like larger and larger data leaks. And for people that are not in the middle of this environment of industry, like for an average person, I think I would be afraid that what people are doing with my data, the data is like
too late.
I don't know. The data is like, I don't know, if Uber are not reliable.
Who is reliable?
Yes. Why I'm putting my.
I have bad news, but I think that no one is exempt on data leaks. You know,
especially if it's social engineering. Like, it's impossible.
That's right. So yes, I think that by being regulated, you can create a more secure framework, and you can create at least the perception of better security. But even with regulation, there you have. Of course, there are lower chances, but you will have chances of being leaked and being hacked by specialized hackers, right? But as you say, I think we are still in the beginning on open banking regulation. We are just seeing development on the B2C side. We are not having a lot of stuff on the B2B side. from the Datanomik side, we can see it as an advantage for us because we still have time to understand the market better, to advance with our solutions. And I think that I am pro-regulation, of course, because I think it's mostly on these countries, on LATAM. We need regulation to force specific stakeholders to move faster, right?
Yeah.
And that's the case of Brazil. Once the central bank released the open banking regulation, all the stakeholders started to prepare their solutions and the infrastructure. And I think we wouldn't have open banking if not of the regulation. But I think regulation should come after some trying with the non-regulated scenario. Why? Because that's the only way of understanding how the market interacts with open banking. What do they need? And how do we need to design and build this open banking regulation? Because if not, you are first maybe taking 1 year, 2 years in an open banking design, and it then turns out that it's not successful because we were not able to read and to understand the user and the customer needs. So I prefer, I don't know, take the example of the US. That they started as a non-regulated scenario. They are totally market-driven. You have amazing players like Plaid, MX, Finicity, Yodlee, and I could say many more. And they are just now starting to design an open banking regulation. But they fully understand the US needs. They fully understand their customer needs because they are all amazing companies,
But
big
it's
companies.
interesting because in Brazil, we had the opportunity to do this. We had a lot of companies, I wouldn't say a lot, but we had a few companies that were doing this. They were doing connections. They were doing like screen scraping and stuff like this. They were connecting different bank accounts.
Yeah, but it was too early for the Brazilian market.
So for investments as well. And the big banks, they didn't want to hear what they were saying because, say, I don't know, this probably will drive more competition, and I'm not sure if I want this right now, so I won't put any effort to help this. So that's why I think we have this feeling that everything started right now, but actually people are trying to do this for a long time, you know. So if you say like Guia Bolso, if you go to investment, we have a lot of how do I say this in English? But when you have all of your investments in one place, we have a lot of solutions like this working through ages. And now people say, hey, this is open bank. It's, oh, okay, so that's a brand new name for something that was happening, you know?
Yeah, of course. I think Guia Bolso and other open banking players that started a few years ago, and they fail, or we could say they didn't succeed. Maybe they don't fail, but they didn't succeed because it was too early and because of other conditions. But that's not something different from what happened in the US. The thing is that Plaid, for example, they started in 2012. And they didn't have any kind of success until 2016, maybe. But they had more money.
They have $1 billion in funding.
The US infrastructure is totally different from the Brazilian infrastructure. So maybe it was just a factor of money and a factor of resilience and a factor of discipline and still try and fail, try and fall. With Guia Bolso, maybe they started different because they started as a B2C player and the personal finance management. But I think that the main reason is that they didn't have time. Plaid had and money.
Yeah, and actually for companies, it's not difficult to find a lot of solutions that probably don't know that they are doing open banking, that they make this kind of bank account aggregation. And you just have to put an operator and password, and they are somehow doing this behind the scenes.
But you asked me when was my first time that I heard about open banking, and I told you that my first time was last year. But I was actually using open banking long time before that, and I have a great relationship with Ben Gleason, the founder of Guia Bolso. and he used to tell the same. They were developing open banking even before open banking existed, right? The term and the concept of open banking, it's totally recent, but we are using automatizations and as you were saying, screen scraping, and there are many companies that they are kind of trying to solve this problem in a very how can I say, manual way, but they are kind of succeeding. They have efficient processes, and they are using open banking. The thing is that they don't know they are using it.
And we are coming to an end here, and I would like to ask you about the future. So, 2030, how do you imagine that open banking?
I don't know where I will be in 2030. 2030 it's a special year because it's 100 years from the first football World Cup. And hopefully it will be in Uruguay and we will win again.
Okay, amazing.
But yeah, 2030 it's in 8 years. I think that 8 years it's a long time enough to develop a lot of open banking stuff and innovation. I think that many of the use cases that we are thinking will succeed in the future won't exist. They don't exist right now. No, it's like in the payments industry. But what I can say is that for open banking to succeed in 2030, it needs to meet two conditions. The first one is having an ecosystem, and I will go deeper on this one. And the second one, be cross-border. So on the first one, open banking, it's really hard, really tough, really complex. It takes actually all the banks, fintechs, financial institutions, and the market as a whole to cooperate all together. And if we don't cooperate together, we won't have a successful open banking. With regulations, with no regulations, with banks, without banks, with fintechs, without fintechs, we need an ecosystem, a real ecosystem where we can push all together through the main objective, which is getting better access to information so we can have better access to services and products. And on the second one, if we think about how open banking will be in the future, we cannot think about local open bankings, right? Specific open bankings. We cannot think about Brazilian open banking and the Mexican open banking and the US open banking and the UK open banking. Why? Because there are more and more companies that are being born global, what they call default global companies. Most of the companies right now are default global. They are from Uruguay, like Datanomik, but they are operating in Brazil, Mexico, Colombia. They have bank accounts in all of the countries, and they need to move money from the US to Mexico, to Brazil, to Uruguay, to India, to Africa. If we really want to explore the benefits of open banking, of moving money, moving information, which is actually the core of open banking, we need to find a way of the regulated open banking in Brazil to cooperate and to be communicated with the regulated open banking or non-regulated open banking of the UK, and the same thing with India, and the same thing with Africa. It will take time, a lot, because to achieve that, you need to have enough infrastructure and development in each of the markets.
And it's a kind of, you have to achieve a kind of consensus between everyone, like at least from the minimum condition to everything works, right?
I think there will be a lot of players that they will be taking the advantage of not having a consensus and innovating with a standard and unifying all these APIs. And
at least you have credit card that works globally in some way.
It's not impossible.
Yeah.
It will be complex. I think that in 2030 we'll be closer. We will be still in maybe not in day 0, but in day 1.
I'm going to set up a reminder and I'm going to message you in 2030.
Yeah, after we win the World Cup.
Okay, amazing. So, Gonzalo, I would like to thank you for your time. It was amazing to have you here. Actually, when I started this podcast, in my room, in my apartment, I was I wasn't wondering that that could reach a lot of different people. So it's amazing to have you here, and of course to receive all the people that I'm having conversations for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. So it's amazing. Thank you for being here again. And if you want to let a message for everyone, that's the time. Feel free. And I won't charge you. So it's
thank you.
Be my guest.
First of all, Gabriel, thank you for the invitation. As you know, I have been following you from all these last months, from the first time that we met at Marbella. I really wanted to be here because I think it's the way to educate the market as well. We were speaking about the 3 types of development. You are contributing a lot in this educational one. So I just want to congratulate for all this job. It's amazing. I think it will be just better with time. And a message to the audience. I think open banking it's great. It's actually great. I think it's just not whether it will happen or not, but when. I think that in Brazil, it's right now a reality. Datanomik, for us, it's not only Brazil. It's actually, we have a broader and global vision on global open banking. But I'm very proud of what Brazilians are doing in Brazil with open banking. I just want to take the example of Brazil for my country, Uruguay, and for other countries that they far behind the regulation. But it's great. So very bullish on the development, on the process, and I think that many things will come with time.
Amazing. So, guys, thank you for having us. Muito obrigado, pessoal. Esse foi o episódio. Conversamos aqui em inglês. Espero que tenha dado para vocês entenderem, que tenha sido um negócio legal pra caramba. Deixa o feedback, comentário. Quem sabe a gente não recebe outros convidados aqui e faz esse formato também. Obrigado por acompanhar e ficamos por aqui. Grande abraço. Valeu!